morning, everyone. This is Michele Hughes from Ageless and Timeless. Today we have a guest who's coming to us from Dubai. And boy, I was way off on the time, but it's 10 p.m. there. So her name is Jessica Alana, and welcome, Jessica.
Hi, Michelle. How are you?
We're so
It's
happy to have you
yeah.
here today, and thank you for staying up for us.
Oh, you're
So
welcome.
because
My
of the
pleasure.
time, yeah, because of the time difference, Jessica's not going to appear on video. We didn't realize it was so late there. So you'll see me, and Jessica will stay on audio, but we are going to have a little presentation later that she prepared if we don't run out of time first. So we'll see if that works, and that will be a video. So Jessica, I was reading your background, and I am so sorry about your loss with your mother. And I'd like you to tell us a little bit about that history and how that has changed you as a human being, as a person. If you don't mind, is it okay to talk about it?
Yeah, it's okay. I don't mind giving, a brief overview. So I lost my mom in 2021 to mental health issues, and it was a really hard time for me and my family. My mom was actually a major reason for me going into the health industry and getting my biomedicine degree and also my master's in longevity science from Geneva College. So she had a huge inspiration on my life. And I think, losing someone in that way, it's definitely empowered me to be, compassionate and have a lot of empathy. And I think this goes a long way within the health industry.
So it's interesting that you didn't go into mental health per se as a result of that tragic event. Do you incorporate mental health with your other protocols that you in your consulting practice that you're currently involved with?
Not so much necessarily. I prefer to work with therapies at the cellular level, so peptides and bioregulators and regenerative medicine. I myself am actually a big fan of psychology. It's actually a hobby of mine. I do like reading a lot of psychology books, but I'm not trained nor qualified to work in mental health. So what I
Mhm.
stick to is what I know.
Right, that's perfect. Well, of course, mental health does play a role in everything in longevity. So, and of course, we know the gut and the brain axis are critical. In fact, today I was just having a conversation about that with one of my colleagues, and he's having an issue with one of his children, and I said, if you're going to deal with depression and anxiety and mental health, you need to start with the gut. And everybody is toxic to some degree. If you can't live in today's modern world without being exposed to toxins. So the gut is where, 90, 80, 70 to 90% of your immune system is in your gut. And all 90% of serotonin is made in the gut. So serotonin being a feel good, like dopamine and the neurotransmitter. So you can't escape this with any of the practice that you're currently doing. So, why did you go to Geneva? Since you are in Dubai now, but were you in Dubai and then went to Geneva, or what exactly was the logistical or chronological event?
So I have my degree in biomedicine from the UK. And
Right.
then very recently, I've decided to undertake a master's in longevity science. It's actually the world's first master's in longevity science, and it's run by Geneva, Switzerland College. So it can be done remotely or it can be done at the campus. So
Mm-hmm.
at the moment, I'm completing the majority of the course remotely. And I will go to the campus at some point, maybe to do my hypothesis or maybe to meet my fellow students.
Excellent, excellent. So, I don't think we have a degree in longevity science in the U.S. at this time, do we? Do you know of any?
I don't think so. I know that the Geneva College was the first, so maybe there'll be rolling that out into the US, but we do have a lot of international US students at the Geneva College.
Yeah, so that so what is the curriculum? Just give us a little taste of what you had to study to get to this level.
You mean what's the curriculum inside the master's
Right,
program or
to get to
the
a master's to earn a master's degree, what kind of course and longevity science, what kind of courses do you have to take?
we have to learn about epigenetics. So we have to understand how the mitochondrial DNA works within epigenetics and also messenger DNA. And
Mm-hmm.
also, I'm actually only a few lectures through the course, but we have some really interesting lecturers, some, world-renowned PhDs and longevity experts. So I'm super happy, and the core curriculum is available online for anyone who wants to look at that.
Mm-hmm. So what course did you resonate with the most?
Actually, I'm only a few lectures through, so I'm still working my way through, but I really like learning about the messenger RNA when it comes to anti-aging.
Yeah, the DNA company is one of my very close colleagues. Are you familiar with them? They do the epigenetic testing in Toronto.
Yeah, I know quite a few epigenetic testing companies.
Right. Well, that one I think is probably the number one because they never sell your data. They're I mean, 23andMe is going bankrupt or has gone bankrupt, but most of these companies have been guilty of using your data and without your knowledge. So this is a big issue in genetic testing and epigenetic testing. So DNA company, absolutely number one, does not use your data. It's all private, and then they send you your results in a 60-page test result where you can also then have an app that you go online because it's very, I don't know how you feel, Jessica, maybe you could tell us, but it's kind of daunting because they have all these different genes that with all these different labels. And when you're a layperson trying to understand what these genes are and how, what they represent, um, you'd need a year-long course just to study that, I think. So, but this app allows you to go online and look under headings like cardiovascular health or brain health or gut health, and then under that they have the genes that are corresponding with those areas, those categories, and then they tell you whether you are optimal, suboptimal, and but the big thing, and this is something that I'm sure you're learning in your courses, you don't have to be like it doesn't have to be like a sentence of death and destruction if you get a suboptimal epigenetic rating on any one of these measurements because epigenetic means lifestyle. So
Yes.
if your genetics say you have one, a suboptimal gene, that doesn't mean it's going to get expressed.
Yes, it's true. It's very correct. It's based on histone modifications and methylation and some other
Correct.
transcription and translation factors as to whether the genome will be expressed. And also, if it is epigenetic, you can positively influence that by regenerative medicine, lifestyle modifications, good food, good diet, good relationships, and that type of thing.
And that's everything that they go through with you. And they have follow-ups. They'd
Oh,
be
nice.
Yeah, I know I introduced connected you with Dr. Bill Lawrence. We'll talk about the peptide bioregulators, but I'd love to connect you with Kashif Khan, who is the co-founder or founder actually, and Tracy Wood is the current CEO. Kashif stepped aside to be business development, but I'd love to connect you. I think they'd be an incredible contact influence for you as you're going through your coursework. So if you want that after offline, I'll be happy to send it a digital introduction for you.
Oh, that
Um,
would be amazing. Thank you so
yeah,
much.
well, they
I'd really
probably want
appreciate
you to
that.
Jessica, they probably want you to take the test and then use that as a benchmark for, relationship going forward, which is exactly what I did. So
Yeah.
anyway, well, we'll talk about that later. So European Wellness, founded by the iconic and widely published Professor Dr. Michael Chan, is the world leader in stem cell and peptide therapy, with 26 medical and aesthetic spa locations primarily in Europe and Asia. Their website, www.europeanwellness.com, details the wide range of wellness products that can be ordered using the Ageless code for a 10% discount. They will also offer our viewers discounts on medical and cosmetic services and products if they choose to visit the clinics. I have firsthand experience using their wide range of science-based stem cell and peptide products and am now a loyal customer. Go to their website, www.europeanwellness.com, for more information about this exciting company. Let's jump forward to the most important issue that brought us together, and that's peptide bioregulators. This is like probably one of the hottest topics today in functional medicine and peptides in general, but more specifically and more narrowly, peptide bioregulators. So, what was it that brought you to that awareness so that you reached out to me to introduce you to Bill Lawrence?
So I've been working in the regenerative medicine space since 2021. And I actually started off with hyperbaric oxygen therapy. So I was working in the wellness lab, which is number one Hyde Park in London. And they had some very beautiful hyperbaric oxygen machines. And after learning about hyperbaric oxygen, I became very interested in other adjuvant therapies, and one of these being peptides. So peptides are typically between 4 and 50 amino acids in chain
Right,
length.
right,
And once I kind of figured out peptides, I stumbled onto bioregulators. And
right.
I actually got to know bioregulators from a very good friend of mine, Dean Henry. Maybe you know him. He's the founder of UAE Peptides, and he knows Dr. Cavinston very well, or he knew him.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so Dean actually introduced me to the oral peptide bioregulators. And in the beginning, I was kind of confused because there wasn't too much literature on them. This was early 2023, and they were hardly being touched upon in early 2023. And most of the literature I found was either a Russian translation, or it was from Russia or Ukraine or those Eastern European countries, and it was hard to find, any literature or second and third hand writing about the oral peptide bioregulators within the West. So I kind of figured out that, at their core, they're epigenetic switches. And then I found some interesting presentations, and then I stumbled across, well, of course, I found Dr. Cavinston's work on PubMed. And in the beginning, I wasn't even sure if his work was available on PubMed. But actually, in the end, I did do a PubMed search on his name, and it brings back all of his studies in English and also his website. I think it's cavinston.info, has all of the studies in English as well. So
Mm-hmm.
then in the end, I just stumbled across the research, and then one of the biggest advocates of peptide bioregulators in the US, and an individual who is carrying on all of the knowledge and Dr. Cavinston's work, is Dr. Bill Lawrence. So I listened to your podcast with him, which I thought was absolutely amazing. I'd never heard of the oral peptide bioregulators being talked about in so much depth by a Western PhD or a Western doctor. So for me, that was very interesting.
And didn't you've joined his clinical trials,
I
correct?
have. That's right. I have.
Okay.
And I recommended a lot of people to join his trials as well. I told a lot of my close friends and my community. I'm pretty sure more than a handful have joined. So I think that was a good outcome for everyone.
Oh, good. I knew he said that there were a couple of people, I think from Geneva, right? your associates?
Yeah, a few people from Switzerland, some friends from Norway as well. I think maybe some people from Dubai and the UK too.
Oh, okay. So
Um,
I didn't know that. He's been very transparent with me about all the work he's doing because I'm in his clinical trials. I've been in for I think it's 2 years now. I just took my
Amazing.
second test. You took the True Diagnostics and the SpectraCell, correct?
I haven't yet. I've been a little busy, but I definitely will soon.
Yeah, in order for him to start working with you, those are the baselines. So, just so
Yeah, of
everybody, if
course.
anybody that's listening, if you are in the medical field, he has a clinical trial, Dr. Bill Lawrence in Atlanta, Georgia. He's absolutely does not want people to call him directly. So I have to screen everybody because he's so busy. I mean, you can imagine with over 100 people in his clinical trials and he's following everybody. But he does tell me that if I have anybody that is interested that's in the medical world, because there is a fee, as you know, Jessica, to be in the clinical trials, and it's a lower fee if you're a medical professional. There's still a concierge clinical trial position for a consumer, but the fee is much higher. So I don't even encourage anybody who's not a medical professional. But if you are and you're interested, either way, you can always reach me at my Ageless and Timeless website. There's a phone number and an email. But anyway, moving on, the True Diagnostics is the DNA methylation measurement. So it gives you your biological age versus your chronological age, which we'll talk about in just a moment, because that's a key element to the baseline for beginning these peptide bioregulators. And then, it measures your DNA methylation, which means, your toxicity level and how your epigenetics or your genetics affect your how quickly you methylate. And I don't know about you, but I found out from doing the DNA test that I'm a slow methylator. So my
Oh,
so that gene was suboptimal. The good news was that the APO4, which is the Alzheimer's, that was normal, the Alzheimer's gene, and then there was another one that they do that was normal, which was a big one. I can't remember which one it was, but it was such a relief to have. So I wasn't surprised about the methylation because I think a lot of people have that suboptimal gene. Again, because of the toxicity in our world, it's very unusual to find people who can get rid of toxins based on their genetics. So there has to be a lot more to it than the lifestyle, as we both know. But then the other test, the SpectraCell test, measures your telomere length. And if anyone is following this, have been listened to or viewed my other podcast, you know that your telomeres are, and Jessica can certainly confirm this, they're really one measurement of your biological aging. So, Jessica, why don't you explain what a telomere is?
yeah. So telomeres are the protective caps at the end of chromosomes
Right,
that basically stop the double helix DNA from unraveling.
right,
And essentially, so if you can imagine a shoelace,
right,
that plastic protective cap at the end of a shoelace,
right.
obviously protects the shoelace strands from unraveling. Well, as you age, those protective chromosome caps, telomere caps, which protect the chromosomes, become more degraded and just get shorter and shorter, and therefore the chromosomes begin to unravel. And this basically translates into faulty genome processing, and therefore you have mistranslation of proteins. And, as you know, the mistranslation of proteins is kind of where a lot of aging and disease begins.
Yeah, I think that's a really very, very good description. And I think the simplest way to say in this case, longer is better. You don't want short telomeres. That means your
Yeah.
DNA is splitting, and they're getting every time there's a, a cellular DNA or telomere split, they get shorter. But the longer they are, the younger you are. Is that a fair, simplistic way to say it?
Yeah, of course. And actually, today there's only, I think, two therapies that have shown significant impact on increasing telomere length. And the first one is hyperbaric oxygen.
Right.
So this was shown by the Israeli group led by Dr. Shai Efrati. And the second one is the bioregulator epitalon.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
for a while there was the TA 65, if you remember, and everybody was touting. You go to the shows, and there was always a
I know
booth.
I hadn't heard of that. Maybe that was
Yeah,
before my era.
but I think if you talk to Bill Lawrence, he'll tell you that the peptide bioregulators are one of the ways to lengthen your telomeres, and that's why they do the baseline, because they want to see how the peptides will affect over time. So um, yeah, that was the one great thing when I did it originally with Bill back 2 years ago. He said he had to send the test back to SpectraCell because he'd never had a result with someone chronologically of my age that was so biologically, my telomeres were an infant of 1 to 5 years old, or infant to 5 years old. He said he couldn't believe the results, so he sent it back to see if they had made a mistake, and sure enough, they didn't. They hadn't. So we'll see what this current one, after 2 years, what the current one does, because that was like a really good outcome. Well, let's talk about biological and chronological aging, and just before we leave that subject, I just want to say, because we'll come back to um, the general subject of peptide bioregulators, but just so everybody understands what Jessica just said is the peptides are amino acids. So the peptide bioregulators have fewer amino acids, usually less than 15, whereas the other peptides that you're hearing so much about, that are usually injectable, although they're becoming more and more available as nasal sprays and some oral integrative peptides that they'll be on my podcast in a couple of weeks. Lori and Kent Holtorf, they do the oral version. But anyway, the differences between peptides generally and peptide bioregulators are the number of amino acids, and that the bioregulators are all oral, whereas the general peptides, like ipamorelin and semarelin and all the others, even insulin. If people know that the original peptide is insulin, correct, Jessica?
Yeah, in the 1940s, I'm pretty sure they developed insulin, and yeah, that was the original founding peptide.
Nobody ever knew or did anything with peptides until about 10 years ago, right? So then now they've become the darling of the longevity world, as I mentioned. And so just so you know, if you're doing peptide bioregulators, which you can get, this Dr. Cavinson is the original.
Original.
Yeah. And he was assigned to that role by Putin.
Yeah,
That doesn't diminish his impact, because he could have won a Nobel Prize. I don't know why he didn't, but
I
he unfortunately
know.
passed away last year. So it would have to
Yeah,
it would have to be posthumous now. Um, but he was assigned because of Chernobyl and because the astronauts, and they were seeing more and more toxicity, and these people that and the athletes too. So he said we want to find a way to address this problem, and Cavinson was given that assignment. And so just a little history, if anyone wants to know, that Bill Lawrence, being who the kind of guy he is, he's like incredibly proactive, and he had a family history of early demise, and he was at that time, I think, when he first started looking into this, he was in his early 70s, and most of his family had passed away before they ever reached mid 70s. So he said, I don't want this to be my fate, and I want to find answers. And he was a very successful real estate developer, just like, he and I had the same background, and came to functional medicine in very different ways. But his was really because of his personal challenge of wanting to extend his life. And so he discovered Cavinson, just like you did. He discovered him and he's researched it. And to his credit, he got on an airplane, went to the Soviet Union, to St. Petersburg, knocked on the door. And to Cavinson's credit, they took him in and they trained him, and they saw him as a real opportunity to expand the peptide bioregulators in the United States, which at that time they had been 40 years in Russia, but sold in drugstores. I mean, easily obtained. But so Dr. Bill Lawrence, who is a PhD, not a medical doctor, became the spokesperson and the steward for expanding the peptides here in the US. So that's just a little bit of background. So, and by the way, the other thing about the bioregulators, they address individual organs.
Yeah.
So let's just say, Jessica, you know this because Bill designs the protocol when you're in his clinical trials according to your testing. And so if he sees, he asks you, interviews you as well, but if he sees that you have a weakness in, let's say, your heart, and he'll design the program to focus more on the peptides that target the heart. So in a way, they're like stem cells that are pluripotent. They target the organ that most needs to be addressed because of its weakness. So every person is customized. So you'll find that as you get going with him, that he'll be interviewing you so that he'll know exactly how to customize your program. And normally you take the peptides 10 days a month. So 10 days on, 20 days off. So, and during that time, you take probably 5 to 6 or 7 different peptides, and orally, and then for 10 days, and then you take a rest, and then come back to them after the next round. So yeah, there will be interesting. This will be my way of telling you. I'll come back to you and to my viewers to let you know how they have affected my personal journey, where a very healthy person is doing this without any health issues. So I'll be interested to see, going back now to the biological versus chronological. So tell me what your definition of chronological versus biological aging is, and how you would guide people to understand how important knowing your biological age is in your health journey.
Yeah, so chronological age is pretty simple to define and explain and understand, and it's basically the number of years that you've lived on planet Earth. So chronological age is pretty easy. Biological age is a bit more complex, but basically it's the age that your cells, tissues, organs, and system are behaving as. But even biological age can be classified into immune age, cognitive age, anabolic age, all these different further classifications. And also the way that biological age is measured can also be further classified. So some people would rather take an epigenetic clock, as we've spoken about, based on DNA methylation patterns. Other people will take a telomere length. Some people will look at the glycans, so the balance of pro-inflammatory and anti-inflammatory glycans.
Mm-hmm.
And with AI and all this deep learning, there's so many new ways to combine multiple blood markers to bring out an overall, biological age. So biological age is a bit more complex, and in of itself, it's a whole topic and concept to understand. But essentially, it's the kind of numerical age that your cells are behaving as, which obviously dictates, the system and proxy you as an individual.
Yes, and we say every time we get into the subject that you are as old as your cells. So all aging begins and ends in the cells. But however, true diagnostics, which measures the DNA methylation, is now technologically so advanced that they've added a way when you do their blood test to measure the health of each of your organs. Now, I don't,
Oh,
yeah, that's going to be exciting. If you haven't done that test yet, I just did it yesterday, the second time. So the first time they didn't have that available. So now they've combined two protocols, the original with the new one, that will tell you so much more information that measures up, and then they'll give you a number of how all this tallies up to your biological age. So very exciting what's happening, and AI of course has been a big part of this, but they've been working with some of the leading, I think it's Cornell University is where they're doing a lot of their research. So yeah, so this is something everybody should be aware. I think everyone should take that true diagnostic test, honestly. There
yeah.
are others, but I think they're the leader in the field, and that's why Dr. Lawrence uses them exclusively for his baseline. So you mentioned in terms of the biological age, that the cells are so important, and so I don't know yet whether True Diagnostic is able to measure the health of your cells. That's something I would need to ask them. The health of your organs is a key indicator of the health of your body, but whether it goes into the mitochondria and the ATP, that I don't know. Are you aware of anyone that's doing that, measuring the health of your cells?
I I don't know anyone who's doing that commercially, but I think if there was a way to look at how your mitochondrial DNA is being expressed, which is a whole other part of the genome, I think that possibly could be a good indicator.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's tests out there which can give a rough estimation of how much ATP, so adenosine triphosphate,
Mm-hmm.
your cells are making, but I don't think it's very accurate. Like you're more likely to get a false positive. But I
Yeah.
think mitochondrial DNA, if someone can measure that, then that could be quite a good outcome.
I think the DNA company's test does measure, but it's just pure genetics, which we both know is not
Yeah.
that can be altered by your lifestyle. So I don't know if it's completely giving you the biological or the biophysical uh, measurement of your cells. That's something that we need to check into that. So which of the peptides has had the most scientific backing in your experience?
I think thymosin alpha 1.
Mm-hmm.
So thymosin alpha 1, it is FDA approved. I'm unvaccinated, so it's not that, these governing medical bodies have too much influence on my train of thought. But if something is FDA approved, then, by proxy, it has a lot of clinical, human clinical trials. So I know that thymosin alpha 1 is patented under the drug name Zadaxin, and it's owned or was owned by Cyclone Pharmaceuticals, which is worth a couple of $100 million. So I know that thymosin alpha 1 has a lot of clinical backing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so in my opinion, it would be thymosin alpha 1, which isn't the most raved about peptide because it solely focuses on the thymus gland and the immune system, which is my favorite topic.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone loves BPC 157,
Right.
but thymosin alpha 1 is probably the one with the most backing.
Well, and keep in mind for anybody that's watching today, what Jessica's talking about are the regular
Longer
peptides.
peptides.
Yeah, they're
Yeah.
not the peptide bioregulators. However, the peptide bioregulators have targeted the thymus gland. There is one Russian name,
Mm-hmm.
but
Yep.
it translates over to the thymus gland. Just as there's another one for the bone marrow and so forth. So again, keep in mind these are two distinct categories of peptides. So the thymosin alpha 1 in the normal peptide, the original peptide, is usually injectable, although have you seen that there are more and more available now to take orally?
Yeah, I have a little bit of an issue with the mass production of oral available peptides.
Mm-hmm.
For example, I saw an advertisement of orally available SS31. Now, SS31 is a synthetic, quite fragile mitochondrial peptide that is involved in repairing the inner mitochondrial membrane.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think it's commercially ethical to sell a product which I don't think will have a high uptake into the mitochondria via an oral route, considering it's difficult for most peptides to even act on cells, let alone go inside the cell and reach the mitochondria to work. So I know that some peptides are very good orally. For example, lorazepam, BPC-157, KPV, but some of the more specific peptides that work intracellularly, work within the cell, so intracellular,
Mm-hmm.
cellular, I don't necessarily think that these should be made oral. And to make the distinction that you were saying, the peptides that are injectable typically be between 4 and 50 in chain length, and then the oral peptide bioregulators developed by Dr. Cavinston are between 2 and 4 in chain length. So for
Right.
anyone watching, the distinction comes from the chain length, so the amount of amino acids in the chain. So
Correct.
that's typically the hard line that we put. Yeah.
Correct. Yes. So going back to the thymosin alpha, that's, historically or originally was targeting for the immune system, correct?
Yeah, it's 28 amino acids long. And actually, it's a bioidentical peptide. So you're born with thymosin alpha 1. So your body makes thymosin alpha 1 as a regular part of homeostasis. And
Mm-hmm.
as you age or you become, impacted by toxins, or maybe you become chronically sick with a virus, something like long COVID or Lyme disease or mold toxicity, your natural endogenous production of thymosin alpha 1 decreases and you have thymic involution and thymic senescence, low natural killer cells. It's
Right.
like a domino effect.
Right.
So when you use thymosin alpha 1 as a bioidentical supplement and you inject this as a peptide, all you're doing is invoking the immune cascades that should already be occurring in your body, but it's not because you're not well.
Right. Yeah, I think a lot of people who have had long COVID have been resorting to building back their immune system using that
Oh,
peptide.
yeah. Yeah, it's super common in the long COVID world.
And BPC 157 is, that's probably the most prevalent, and that's actually made in your gut. That's why there are two forms of BPC 157. One, it targets your joint health, and the other one targets your gut health. And so you can actually take one peptide and basically try to get results on two fronts. But what do you think of that peptide? Have you seen it work with some of the people that you work with?
Yeah, I really like BPC 157. So it's primarily spoken about and discussed for the gut and also for ligaments and soft tissue and joints, as you said, but also it actually blocks EMF. So it actually has been proven to basically repair the voltage gated ion channels within cells.
Mm,
So yeah, it's very beneficial at the cellular level. And also, it's neuroprotective. It actually balances the dopamine and serotonin receptors, and it's also very good for the vagus nerve.
mhm.
As you said, all of the peptides are omnipotent, pluripotent, pleiotropic in nature. So they have so many different benefits, 10 plus benefits per peptide. So if you take a stack of peptides, say you take 5 different peptides all in one protocol, you're going to have, so many benefits, like 10 to a high numerical value, because they're all going to be synergistic and coinciding together.
So what would you stack with BPC 157?
I would stack full fragment thymosin beta 4, otherwise known as TB500.
Yeah,
So I would also stack GHKCU
yeah,
as well.
the copper peptide.
Exactly. And then I would combine a growth hormone releasing peptide, either something like CJC1295 blended with ipamorelin,
Yeah,
or either of those on their own, or something like sermorelin as well,
right,
or hexamorelin, tesamorelin.
right.
I haven't heard that many good reviews about MK677. I
Mhm.
think I've heard it's a pretty, um, it's I've heard it gives bad side effects, so I tend to stick to the morelin growth hormone releasing peptides.
Yeah, and so this obviously a hot subject today is the semaglutides and the
Oh
Ozempic and the
yeah.
Mounjaro. How do you feel about people taking the semaglutides?
So I think that they've been wrongly villainized. And I think that taken in the correct context at a conservative dosage, at a conservative frequency, alongside a healthy high protein diet, alongside high intensity workouts,
Yeah,
alongside 10 to grams of creatine every day,
right.
alongside other anabolic healing peptides. So personally, I don't recommend a GLP without recommending a growth hormone releasing peptide taken alongside a GLP, because that more or less offsets the muscle wasting. So there's a lot of strategies that can be overcome when taking the GLPs, and I think that those medications, they went like to the masses, right? And whenever you have something for the masses, you also have the media blowing the medication out of proportion,
Hmm.
especially with the celebrity paparazzi photos of celebrities who had taken the medication and then they were looking very gaunt, and I
Right.
think it became a almost like a political statement. It became very, political as well. And I think that it was blown out of proportion. And I think when used correctly, those are very good amino acid chains. And in my practice, I've never had someone come back and say, I had this really bad side effect, this went wrong. I've had very good success. And I think a lot of practitioners who truly use GLPs and how they're meant to be used, I think they feel the same way.
Mhm. And just for everyone to understand, GLP is a synonym for the semaglutide. It's a GLP-1, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And so, what does GLP stand for? Gamma? What is
It's
the?
glucagon like
Oh,
pathway, I
that's what it is.
think.
Glucagon-like
Yeah,
pathway. Yeah.
or glycogen like pathway. I don't I don't I don't use them too often. I'm more focused on the immune system.
Hmm.
That's kind of my bread and butter.
Hmm.
But when I do use GLPs, I consult my colleagues, and we've never had a bad experience.
Well, also, let's not forget that the insulin resistance is one of the biggest causes of weight gain. And so the original purpose of the GLP-1 semaglutide is for insulin control. Or,
Exactly.
so that in itself, it could help people to lose weight if they get that under control, their blood sugar. So,
Yeah,
what do you feel though about the people that come back and say, do I have to stay on this for my entire life?
yeah, I get that question from almost one in every three individuals who are interested in peptides. The way I explain it is that peptides are an arm of regenerative medicine. So the peptides actually do regenerate healthy signaling cellular cascades within the cells. So they regenerate healthy communication, healthy cellular communication. In theory, this should rebuild a new baseline level of health for you during the peptide therapy. And if you look after yourself and you maintain a very good lifestyle, a good diet, then you should not really receive any diminishing returns when you finish the peptide therapy. So, you shouldn't have to be very dependent on the peptides. You should be able to maintain more or less that baseline level of health that you've accomplished during the peptides. So
Mhm.
I always say, you know, we, the peptides, they don't act like a drug. So your cells don't become dependent on them. So there's no diminishing returns. But if you use the peptides and then when you stop, you fall back into old habits, you get bitten by a tick, you start living in a moldy environment, you pick up an infectious disease, maybe you go through some psychosomatic stress and you become inflamed again, then your cells signaling capacity will eventually begin to drop. And it may seem like you need to become dependent on peptides, but it's not, because for people who maintain their healthy lifestyle and don't become inflamed, they're not dependent on peptides. And usually the first cycle to get them to that baseline to hit their goals, gets them there. And then from that, they actually use peptides as a hobby and as a way to stay optimized or slowly tweak on their goals.
So if someone wants to lose just 5 or 10 pounds, would you ever let them use the semaglutides or
Yeah,
GLP-1s?
yeah, you can do, for example, one injection once every 2 weeks.
Hmm. Is that considered microdosing?
Yeah, it is.
And
It
what
is.
is
And,
the what
and
how much in that one dose that you do every 2 weeks?
so I typically use the latest GLP, and it's a triple agonist and it's called retatrutide. So I've kind of moved on from the semaglutide, which is the Ozempic, and the Wegovy, which is the tirzepatide,
Hmm.
and I tend to use the retatrutide. It's a pretty like bleeding edge GLP, so it's a triple agonist.
Hmm.
And that one we use it at 1,250 mcg, beginning in a very conservative dosage of maybe once every 2 weeks. And then from there you can build up, because a lot of people, they have a lot of resistance with these GLPs.
Hmm.
And it's always better to, start the person very, very slow, just to reassure them, make them feel comfortable. And once they, they realize that they're not gonna blow up after the injection, you can slowly start increasing them.
Is that intramuscular, the injection?
It can be, so there's a few different injection sites. You can do the thigh, you can do like the love handle, upper glute, trident, trigone. You can do around the belly button. Personally, for me, I've always preferred to inject in my glute trigone, but I know a lot of people inject around the belly button, which would be considered subcutaneous.
Hmm. Correct. So, can people work with you, Jessica, if they're interested with telemedicine?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So I'm based in Dubai, and I am taking on clients at a limited capacity because I'm doing my master's and I'm also building out a few peptide brands, but I am taking on clients. And also I have my main partner clinic in London. So anyone in the UK can go to the clinic in London and can be seen face to face. And I
Hmm.
also have some partnering clinics also in Tokyo and here in Dubai as well, and also in Switzerland too.
So, what's the name of the clinic?
Oh, the one in London is called
Nutro
Nutro Clinic.
Nutro Nutro.
Yeah, Nutro. That's right. But I
Mhm.
can do telehealth, or we can see you in London if you prefer more of a hands-on service.
Right. And so if somebody's in the US, though, which is, probably 70% of our viewers, they would have to do telemedicine if they're not coming to London or Dubai or Geneva or.
Yeah, I've seen more than probably 400 clients now via telehealth, telemedicine. So I can definitely see people in the US. I can get the peptide shipped to you within the US. I have very good suppliers within the US. We can do everything remotely. I have all of my professional qualifications on my LinkedIn. I have client testimonials, video testimonials on my Twitter, well, X, on Instagram, on YouTube. And also, I think we're going to link one of my presentations at the bottom of the podcast as well. So you can also see my written work and you can have a deep dive into peptides for biological age and oral
Yeah.
bioregulators for biological age as well.
Yeah, I think what we'll do, since we're not doing a video today, I think what we're going to do is have you put this, we'll put this in the show notes, your presentation.
Yeah,
And
cool.
so I'm saying that on air right now so that my assistant makes sure that she gets the presentation from you and then adds it to the show notes for our viewers. So if you'll take care of that with Roxanne after the show, I would appreciate it. Um,
Amazing.
yeah. So what do you require when you start working with a client or a patient? What do they have to give you if it's telemedicine?
I mean, I'm pretty flexible, so I don't necessarily believe that peptides should be dependent on blood test results. There's nothing really in a blood test result that would say, okay, you have this marker elevated or decreased, so therefore we need to use BPC 157. And I think that's a common misconception of clients. They think that they need to get a whole battery of tests for peptides.
Mhm.
Whereas actually, I like to be a bit more open-minded and just kind of I will ask, a relatively basic intake form. So what are your goals? What are your symptoms? What do you feel intuitively you're struggling with? What is your past? What other therapies have you tried? And from that, I can put together a pretty in-depth protocol, typically 5 to 6 injectables, 1 to 2 oral. We can also then use 1 to 2 intranasal. And then also, depending on the investment that someone would like to make into the protocol, as in the peptide cost, we can also add the bioregulators in there as well. So, you don't really need too much to start peptides because there's no correlation between a test marker and a specific peptide.
Mhm. Have you ever experienced any negative side effect where somebody should never take a peptide in terms of their health
Mm,
condition?
not thus far. So the main body of my work is looking at models of immunocompromisation. So that is typically within that bracket are, chronically toxic, chronically sick people with mold illness, with Lyme disease,
Mhm.
and those people are very sensitive individuals and they're very sensitive to supplements and even to just chemicals in their daily environment,
Mhm.
and all of those people have tolerated peptides extremely well and have done very well on the peptides.
Mhm.
I have had a handful of people who have been treatment resistant, so no matter, what peptides we've used, we haven't managed to get the results that we've been looking for. But this can be attributed to maybe biofilms, because if you have biofilms around your impacted area of cells, it's going to be difficult to get any active into those cells. So I have had people who've been treatment resistant, but we have tried all the way and we have gotten somewhere, but not the same results as the majority of my clients.
And how are you defining biofilm?
So biofilm is typically a reservoir of, I think it's made up of chitin. So chitin is like this gelatinous glue that these bacterial, viral, fungal, parasitic reservoirs, they all clump together and they make these biofilms. It's very common in long-standing gut issues, in UTI issues, bladder issues, It's actually very common for the ENT as well, and also the COVID virus was known to have a very high biofilm generating, genome. There's studies on that now.
And how does one know whether they have that condition?
If you have a biofilm,
Mm-hmm.
if you're, dairy treatment resistant and you have been for years and your symptoms come in waves, cyclical waves, so, every 3 months or every 6 months, dairy cyclical waves almost like correlated to the moons and the seasons changing, um, then you're more likely to have a biofilm. So if you have a symptom increase, then around these cyclical waves, you're more likely to have a biofilm because bacteria and all the living pathogens in the biofilm have their own life cycle.
Mm-hmm.
When this life cycle goes through its stages, they break out of the biofilm and they cause an increase in symptoms. It's a whole other very scary
Yeah.
topic. Yeah.
Well, I know you've done a lot of work with mold and Lyme, so is that a clue to you right away if somebody is dealing with mold or Lyme disease that they also have the biofilm issues that are going to prevent any treatment from being efficacious?
Yeah, it can depend. So Lyme itself is known to cause a lot of fibrotic cysts. So Lyme
Mhm.
actually will make cysts and it will hide in the cysts. And it makes these with fibrin. So that can be pretty difficult. And then also, yeah, people who are, chronically sick, they've been proven to have very high biofilm reservoirs. So I do see that commonly. And, if someone is very treatment resistant, you can kind of get a sense for it and you can put them on maybe 2 to 3 months of biofilm busters before starting any peptide therapy protocol.
Mhm. So, um, Jessica, they just flagged me that we're running out of time, and I want to ask you a couple other questions before we go. What do you think is the future of peptides and peptide bioregulators?
So actually, I think the human genome has around 300,000 peptides available to code and to
Mhm.
translate into proteins, which are what, peptides are. Anything that's made up of an amino acid is a protein. And really, I mean, how many do we actually have on the bench? So, on the bedside. So, how many are commercially available for people to buy? I think 35, maybe not even that. The bioregulators are 21. So it's under 100 peptides and bioregulators combined that you can go on the internet or get prescribed and treat yourself with. So I
Mhm.
think the future is actually figuring out which amino acid chains are going to bring about the greatest success to human health, creating more of those, reducing barriers between in vitro to human clinical trials of these amino acid chains.
Mhm.
And then also exploring peptides from bee venom to the DMT frog to, other animals who have had like tribal medicinal impacts and also bringing those peptides to humans as well. Because I know in traditional Chinese medicine, bee venom is huge, right? And I really agree with bee venom. So, there should be a bee venom peptide. There also should be a lot more peptides for people with spinal cord injuries as well.
Mhm. Good point. Well, they're using stem cells for spinal cord injuries, but you're right, there are not a lot of peptides that focus on the spinal cord. I wonder why that is.
Or the brain, not like, I mean, we have cerebral lysin and cortaxin, but they're not exactly super specialized. They're just blended down pig and cow peptides.
Mhm. So, Jessica, how can somebody who's interested reach you? What's your
So
website?
my website is jessicaalana.com. My email is jessicaalana.com and my Instagram is Jessica Alana. And I'm sure we'll have all of that in the show notes, and it'll also be the first slide on my linked presentation as well. So yeah, you can reach to me. You can either reach out to me via my email, or you can use the contact form on my website. Or if you want to do more of a deep dive, you can search me on LinkedIn, you can search me on Twitter, on Instagram, on YouTube. You
Okay.
can see everything and all my proof of work.
And Jessica, have you seen the latest issue of Top Doctor magazine?
I don't think I have. I We don't get a lot of exposure to medical magazines here in Dubai. It's a very different community
Mm.
here.
Well, you can, I think you can view it online. The reason I'm asking is that I'm writing a monthly column for Top Doctor magazine, and I just did my first interview with a cover of Jay Campbell,
Oh, I
which I,
love him.
yeah, so I would love if you would watch, or I should say, read the interview, because he is now a co-founder of BioLongevity Labs, which is taking Dr. Cavinson's research into the U.S. manufacturing of peptide bioregulators. So they do
Yeah,
other peptides as well, but and some oral and mostly injectable. But um, I think you find the interview fascinating if you have a chance to catch it. Or I could ask Brooke, if you can't find it, let me know and I'll have my assistant send you the link. Um,
perfect.
yes.
I have a lot of respect for Jay. He had, he's basically the OG of the peptide industry. So I
Hmm.
have a lot of respect for him. He was talking about peptides like 10 to 15 years ago.
Oh yeah,
So yeah, I'm
he
happy for
wrote
him.
he wrote the Bible. He's been on my podcast a couple, and I've been on his. So we did a mutual reciprocal appearances, and then he stopped doing his podcast when he became an entrepreneur in the startup world. So we're not doing the podcast with him reciprocally, but we did select him as my first article, and the reason is that because peptides have become such a hot topic, and he is like the granddaddy, particularly testosterone. He wrote the
Oh
Bible
yeah.
way back, I think it was 2010 or something. He wrote the Bible before it was even such a hot topic, and uh, that book, his original book, he's written 6 different books, but I told him, I said, Jay, I don't know how you ever sleep because he's so prolific. But that original testosterone Bible is still being used today by,
Yeah, he's awesome.
and he's not a medical doctor. He just like Bill Lawrence and me and myself, we're all real estate developers. Interesting that
Yeah,
we
I
morphed into the functional medicine field, a longevity field, really through experiences in our own personal lives, just like you did.
yeah, I don't I wouldn't discredit anyone for not being a medical doctor. I'm not a medical doctor.
Right,
My bachelor's is biomedicine, my
right,
master's is longevity science. I don't have I'm not licensed to practice medicine. I wouldn't discredit anyone for being a medical doctor.
right.
Knowledge is knowledge, and if you can show true understanding and you can help people, and you'll gather people who trust you, and you'll help them. That's just how it
Right.
goes.
Yeah, and my good friend Lisa Tomati, who you should be on her podcast called Pushing the Limits. I'll introduce you. But she's not a medical doctor, but
Thanks.
she does hyperbaric. She has a whole chamber in her. I mean, she has a, a number of different hyperbaric chambers in her clinic. But she's another good example of people, someone like you, just studied, and has had a consulting practice. All right. Well, we've run out of time, and I just thank you so much. I wish you the absolute very best. I'm going to talk to you offline
Yeah.
about these connections, and anything else I can do for you or you can do for me. We'll find the path forward. So,
Oh, well,
and
thank you so
and
much.
I'll let you know what happens with Bill Lawrence and the next phase of the clinical trials. I'm really looking forward to hearing about your experience as you progress forward with him.
I'm
So
so excited. Yeah, and we'll talk very soon. We've planned this for a while,
I
last year,
know, and we had to
October.
cancel. I
So
know, Jessica, you've been very
yeah.
patient with us, and
Oh,
we've
you
been.
too.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you. All right. Well, you have a good night's sleep, and thank you
Thank you so
again for
much.
taking the time so late in your evening to be with us. And
My
we really
pleasure.
appreciate all of your knowledge and sharing with us today. Thank you again, Jessica.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Bye bye.
Bye.